Chris!
Heath.
Are you hearing me loud and clear?
You're coming through over the airwaves.
All right. Well, it definitely feels like I'm in my foxhole and you're in your foxhole.
Yeah, how are you holding up?
Okay, so we have yet to say the C word, and for good reason. Chris, we're both internet entertainers at this point, but we're also public figures who ought to report on certain things. And again, I'm dancing around that C word. Chris, what is your thought on the overdoing it that is the coverage of coronavirus?
It's definitely hard to escape, and it's obvious why. This is definitely one of the most prominent historical events in my lifetime that I've experienced, especially when it comes to actually affecting my day-to-day life.
Yes, because it has. And initially we thought it wasn't gonna, but now it definitely has. My biceps are forever changed.
Same here.
Yeah, so let's do...
My gym is closed down.
Okay, here we go, right? So before we go too far into it, I feel like we should give the fans who have heard nothing but coronavirus complaining a time window in which we will just stop talking about it. Because we're kind of like an escape for people, and if we just if we don't give them the chance to like skip over what we're about to say, they might get too depressed and stop listening.
Exactly. That's echoing my thoughts. We need a little break. It's definitely going to seep into the news enough already.
Right.
Let's just talk about some good old-fashioned video game fun.
No, here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to start the episode with a Coronacast, is what I'm calling it. I'm going to say a timestamp, and then the fans who might not care about it, especially if this blows over in a week and it feels inconsequential, they can just skip to the regular episode.
It's funny you said how this could blow over in a week. Currently, that doesn't seem very likely. Also, just the nature of the way we do this podcast, there's usually this window between the recording and the release, which usually lasts about a week and a half. So I wonder how many of our listeners, upon listening to episode 35, which released a couple days ago. Oh, we haven't actually said what podcast this is and what episode number this is. This is Mobius Tubes, your favorite video gaming podcast. We're recording this episode on March 21st, 2020. Episode 35 came out a couple days ago. I wonder how many of our listeners, upon listening to it, were thinking to themselves, wow, Chris and Heath are doing a great job avoiding the topic of coronavirus and remaining very calm. Because at that point, this is only a couple weeks ago we recorded that, things were not nearly as dire as they are now.
Right. So if you don't want to hear about how coronavirus has impacted our lives, please skip to
9 minutes and 20 seconds. Okay, we have free reign to talk Corona stuff.
Chris, there's like a limit on eggs at Wegmans. There's a limit on cases of water at Walmart. My New York City apartment is currently inaccessible. How have you been enduring?
This is kind of an interesting conversation. This will kind of be like a time capsule of what could be like a very historic moment.
Very much so.
I have a lot to be appreciative of. I am able to work remotely from home, so my livelihood has not been affected.
Meanwhile, my job is put on hold.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, they shut down all the movies in New York City, so the rest of the state followed suit. I'm on like a 2 to 3 week hiatus, and this is really just an excuse for me to just become a streamer and make money through donos. But it's funny. So what day of the pandemic is it for you personally? I think it's like day 8.
My personal pandemic, it feels like day 7 kind of, but I did leave the house 5 days ago to go to the gym for the final time. And that was the last time I left the house. Otherwise, I have been stationed here.
That's funny because my parents took me out to eat Sunday night, and who knows how long it'll be until I go to a restaurant again.
Right. My family has a tradition of going to this Mexican restaurant called Maria's once a week, every week. And we got takeout, which we never do, for dinner a couple nights ago. So we got the Maria's experience at home.
There are still new confirmations of actors and athletes who seemingly all got it. Do you know anyone personally that has the virus?
I have one friend who was being tested for it. He suspects he does have it, although I cannot confirm at this time.
Oh my gosh. I would say that you're in the minority. Most people do not know anybody personally that has it.
It could come back negative, to be fair.
And my girlfriend, the nurse, is aware of 2 cases at the hospital where she works, despite not knowing anybody personally that has it.
We have a mutual game night acquaintance who, his father, is a doctor, and one of his patients was confirmed to have the virus and has since passed away.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa. This is towing a fine line between joke pandemic and real pandemic.
Oh, I don't think there's a line any longer. I no longer think there's anything to joke about.
Yeah. I mean, I'm spending a lot of my time on Twitter and looking over the best quarantine memes.
Oh, okay.
So that
could
bubble
be
got
coloring
burst.
your perspective.
Yeah.
I guess the part that is most disconcerting to me is the uncertainty around how long this could last, because no one really knows. There's just people's best guesses. Some of which, the longest I've seen is like 18 months.
No chance. No, it's going to go into April, but then like schools will probably start up and as like a weird summer semester.
Because my brother is back from college because the rest of the semester has been
canceled,
delegated to online courses only.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
All public schools in our county have been closed for the time being. I've been told to work from home indefinitely, which is unprecedented. Prior to this, I worked from home a total of 1.5 days. And now I've already worked from home an additional 5 since the outbreak.
Well, I'm still bullish on when you'll be back in your little cubicle begging for the second coming of the virus to send you back home, because I feel like you'll be back in the office no later than end of April.
Okay. That wouldn't be earth-shattering, I suppose. The stock market is in free fall, seemingly. It's like the biggest single-day dip since, I think, sometime in the 80s. So this is even a larger single-day drop than in the Great Recession, because people really don't even have the option to go out and spend too much money. They can't leave their homes. I think there's an executive order going into effect on Sunday where if you are on the road and you're not driving to like a grocery store or a hospital, they could pull you over.
Yeah, but how do you enforce that?
True. But I think just it's going to be put into effect as like a suppression to get even fewer people trying to drive around.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. Did you have any other thoughts on the current state of affairs?
Some of the thoughts may seep into what I've been playing / the video game news, but as far as just a straight up Corona talk, that's really all I have the strength to discuss right now.
Seems good to me. Let's resume the regular episode with what we've been playing. Chris, I have had like a week to play games since losing my job, and you have allegedly played many, many games.
I have.
Well, let's start with the game that we both played.
Okay.
And I'll actually lead into this by saying, Chris, do you remember that I Love AC gag that we played? Which episode was it?
Yeah. That was, I think, in the 20s, probably.
Probably. Yeah, it's getting harder and harder to tell. The joke was there's so many franchises that share the initials AC. It was Assassin's Creed, Animal Crossing, Ace Combat, and Armored Core. The latter two are less familiar, but Animal Crossing and Assassin's Creed, the joke is still very much alive. on this episode, I have both Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Animal Crossing New Horizons to talk about. So, I was trying to workshop jokes and be like, oh, in this AC game, I was collecting debt. And in this AC game, I was the debtor. You know how, like, in Odyssey, you're a bounty hunter. And in New Horizons, you're the client of Nook Inc. I'm getting ahead of myself. Chris, we both played Assassin's Creed Odyssey, did we not?
Yeah, I've been playing it. I had no idea you were also dipping in.
Well, here's the thing, right? I want to say that you already purchased it, but Steam and Epic Games were having a big Ubisoft publisher sale. So Odyssey was like 67% off. Was that the case for you?
I just picked it up this couple days ago, so I got to benefit from that sale as well.
Yeah, so I benefited from that sale, and then I also used my Epic Games $10 coupon that I got from just the holiday season. So I paid like $10 for Odyssey, which is pretty much a steal because it's the most recent Assassin's Creed, and it's pretty good. And, well, you can tell me more about that. Because I looked at your Steam profile. You played like 10.2 hours, and I haven't even left Tutorial Island yet.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, what a coincidence. This is an unprecedented occurrence, right? We've never coincidentally been playing the same game at the same time before.
We've never tandem covered a game before, which is cool. Yeah, so quick, at the same time, tell everybody what you love the most about Assassin's Creed Odyssey. You ready? 3, 2, 1. The bounty hunter system. Okay, go into comfort food.
Okay, I can cover this fairly quick. So, I've been at my house for a while now. More free time on my hands than usual. No longer have a 30-minute commute to work. I was thinking to myself, what kind of a game would be perfect for this situation? I'm thinking something that's very long, very familiar, very comforting, and is constantly going to be telling you, like patting you on the back, rewarding you with progression. And my mind immediately went to the experience I had with Assassin's Creed Origins last year and thought this would be the perfect time to play Odyssey, a game many people, their major complaint was it's a little bloated, a little too long in the tooth, which suits me just fine for the current circumstances I find myself in. So yeah, I've been playing it. It is immediately familiar to anyone who has played Origins. It's kind of the second game in this new era of Assassin's Creed games. I don't want to steal your thunder by talking about it too much.
No, go on, please.
Okay. The few things that have stood out to me as being new are, and you're still on Tutorial Island, but you've got to see this coming.
I just rescued the captain, and he's like, are you ready to set sail? And I looked at the world map is crazy. I'm so eager to get to like the far east islands, like even past like Mykonos.
Right.
And you have gotten off of the island.
Just a little bit, but you're right, I have. So we haven't actually said, Odyssey, if you haven't been able to tell, is a game set in ancient Greece around 400-something BCE. And yeah, the whole eastern side of the map is the Aegean Sea, just dotted with islands. It looks really fun to explore. You do get a boat, so this is like combining AC Origins with one of the best parts of Black Flag. You get your whole ship and a crew, and you get to upgrade your ship, which adds this whole other layer of progression for you to pursue. Yeah, so it's combining the pirate life you may have missed from 2013's Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag with all the cool open world trappings of Origins. And so, yeah, I welcome the reintroduction of the boat. Another cool thing, the coolest thing you said mercenaries?
Yes. So I have only interacted with Talos the Stone Fist.
Yeah, the mercenary system is new as well. It's kind of cool to have the full context for this. This is like a super bare bones re-implementation of the Nemesis system from the Shadow of Mordor series. Because you've got these semi-randomly generated mercenaries who are just patrolling the lands looking for work. And they've got a couple unique traits to them. For example, I found a guy who is always patrolling around with his pet dog, or another guy who takes severely reduced damage from melee attacks. So you want to try to hit him with your bow and arrow or sneak up on him and get a stealth attack in. So yeah, you've got to kind of do your research on them a little bit, know how to best fight them. They don't have nearly the personality that the orcs do in Shadow of Mordor, nor the complexity of the systems so far at least, but it is kind of cool to see that system finally emerge in a new franchise.
Well, I never played Shadow of Mordor, so I this is my first crack at it. And I was just so amazed how I completed a quest by the lumber yard and went back to town to collect my reward. And then you look at the minimap afterward and you see the bounty hunter is over at the lumber mill investigating where you were and then starts running in your direction. And it's like, oh no, I've had 2 close calls in which it'll alarm you and say the bounty hunter is nearby. And you need to hide in a bush and wait for him to pass because he's of a higher level than you. Gosh, have you tried to fight people at a higher level? This is as prohibitively difficult as God of War.
Right. There's like a huge arbitrary difficulty spike if you try to tackle content above your level. I don't know how I feel about that necessarily. Maybe not the biggest fan, but it's definitely something.
Well, here's where it gets really lame is if you collect a piece of armor that's of a higher level, it's like, oh boy, can't wait to wear this in an hour.
True. I kind of like that putting the carrot in front of the horse kind of reward to push you to the next level, though.
Fair, yeah, it is a carrot. Yeah, okay.
The mercenaries, they can lead to these cool dynamic moments that emerge. It's worth noting that you can find mercenaries who are not immediately hostile to you. They can be just kind of a neutral guy walking around. But if people see you committing crimes like stealing and murdering, they will put a bounty on your head, at which point that's when the mercenaries start hunting you down. And the one cool emergent moment I've had that involved a mercenary was this early game side quest boss fight against a big giant boar. And it was a tough fight. I was probably not going to be able to beat it. The boar, it rushes you really quickly, does a good amount of damage, keeps summoning a bunch of smaller boars, which kind of like distract you. But then a high-level mercenary who was tracking me down emerged onto the scene mid-boss fight, gave me an opportunity to get some distance between me and the boar. The mercenary and the boar were going at it, doing severe amounts of damage to each other, and I was able to sneak in and finish them off. So that was a really lucky
fortuitous
series of events that befell me.
Here, we haven't said what difficulty setting that we're playing on.
You're right. I'm just playing it on vanilla normal difficulty.
Okay, I thought being such a Assassin's Creed expert and having played all of them between Brotherhood and Black Flag, I put this thing on hard, and hard mostly has to do with combat. You take much more damage from a certain sword stroke, and I don't care for the combat in this game. It's too gimmicky with the Spartan kick and activating your rage, and I wish just parrying attacks and dodging arrows was a little bit more finely tuned. So I switched it back to normal mid-Cyclops fight because I couldn't handle dying another time. And here's a really weird nitpick. When you die, it gives you the option of going back to your last save or opening up the saves menu. I wish that when it just by default opened up your last save, because now I have to pay attention during the death sequence to wait for the button prompt. And you watch your character get brutally finished off, and it's like, come on, just take it out of my hands at that point.
Oh, we didn't actually clarify this. Well, you said your character. Are you playing as Alexios or Cassandra?
I'm playing as the guy.
Okay. I went with the girl.
Well,
just because.
Wait. Okay, you finish what you were saying.
From what I've heard, I think the general consensus is Cassandra's voice actor does an impressive job compared to Alexios.
Oh, are there accents all over the place?
So far, I found Cassandra pretty charming, but I can't speak to Alexios's voice acting quality.
Fair enough. And this leads perfectly into the next part. Chris, in Assassin's Creed, there's like synchronized points, which are high up and you got to climb, and then it reveals more of the map. The very first view synchronized point is at the top of this statue of Zeus, which is carved atop a mountain, and you basically climb up it by going up his foot, up his calf, and then up his back onto the thunderbolt that he's holding. If you go out of your way and climb to his uncircumcised dick, I don't know what Cassandra says, but Alexios goes, I should probably not climb on this.
Oh,
are you telling me that you didn't go like spend the extra moment to like climb around his hip onto his wiener?
The thought to explore Zeus's nether regions never crossed my mind, actually.
Oh, you're missing out. I found a fun Easter egg.
Yeah, I bet Cassandra would have had something very amusing to say about that.
You remember was it BuzzFeed that was like, video games catered to the male fantasy? That was that moment. It'll give you a little experience bump every time you find like a cool historical landmark. And I'm currently in the city of Delphi, I think, and there are a lot of dicks in that city. Okay. All right, looking forward to it. Hey, we didn't mention, we mentioned difficulty setting, but we didn't distinguish guided versus exploratory mode.
You're right. We did not.
Yeah, so guided would just be plastering your compass with markers of treasure and just like, would it give you a mini map? I don't think so. Whereas exploratory mode, Senu is back, and you just go up into Eagle Vision, and you sort of hunt that stuff down.
Yeah, so guided is the very traditional video game waypoint experience where every time you accept a quest, it'll tell you exactly where to go. That is the way I am playing, despite the fact that they said...
Oh, what?
Yeah, in the menu, the exploratory setting, I think they said this is the way we intended for the game to be played. But I said no thanks. Just tell me where to go. I would say I have better things to do, but I really don't right now.
Fair enough.
But I feel like the game's going to be long enough without me having to search for things.
All right, this will be interesting to see how our playthroughs differ.
Because you are playing exploratory?
Yeah.
What are your impressions so far?
It's fun. It's like Red Dead. It's like all the other open worlds that we've been doing. How you can't just beeline to the nearest wolf. You gotta encounter it on the mountainside. I will say, when you go to Odysseus's palace, you have killed the bandit leader. You looted the treasure. Now find the last ancient tablet. I have still not found the ancient tablet. No matter how hard my eagle looks for it, does not appear from any vantage point. So I just left that incomplete. It went back to the mainland. Supposedly, if it were guided, maybe an objective marker would show up. But I'm having a fine time with exploratory. It's not much more grunt work that needs doing.
Okay. And it kind of immerses you a little bit more, not having a big emblem above the thing you need to go to, perhaps.
Yeah, I just go to whatever's closest. And even though I'm 4 hours in, I wouldn't switch it to guided.
Got it. Who knows? Maybe your opinion will change once you get off the island.
Uh-oh.
Hard to say.
Yeah.
You brought up Red Dead Redemption 2 briefly. I don't know if I've been spoiled by Rockstar's meticulous craftsmanship or not, but certain things about this game, which is comparatively much more arcadey, come across as being kind of janky. I'm so used to Arthur bending over slowly to methodically pick every herb he encounters. Well, in comparison, I'm crossing by little shrubs I need to loot and also like rock outcroppings to loot.
Olive wood.
Yeah.
Iron ore deposits.
I click A as I'm speeding by on my horse Phobos, and they just immediately enter my inventory, which is super convenient. But just the attention to detail and the animations of this game, are kind of hokey compared to what I've been playing the past few months in Red Dead, where every animation is like very slow but oh so detailed and realistic.
Fair enough. But I think much in the way that you would be tiresome of the exploratory versus guided, I much prefer that Alexios can just, that iron ore just warps into his pocket without breaking a sweat mid-sprint to the other side of the island. I feel like the time saved by skipping those Arthur Morgian animations is a welcomed addition.
Oh, yeah. I'm quickly growing to appreciate it. It was just a very jarring change of pace for me.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
what do I have to look forward to in the next 6 hours?
What abilities have you been speccing into? Tell me that.
I hate the abilities because they feel very not Assassin's Creed. I powered up my regular old assassinations, powered up my regular old bow, and powered up my regular old sword. I don't give a crap about the Spartan kick. I don't give a crap about poison. The rightmost assassin ability that is up on the D-pad and it reveals the world's secrets, I feel like that's just Batman Arkham Detective mode, and it kind of you never turn it off. I'm just going to be spamming up on the D-pad, and I don't want to ruin my playthrough by getting that too early.
Yeah, that scanning the environment ability was in Origins by default, actually. Yeah, you said these abilities you map to hotkeys, and then they have cooldowns. It feels like they're ripped straight out of an MMO RPG or something like that. It doesn't feel very Assassin's Creed-y. They're new to this game, actually. They were not in Origins. It is definitely a big change of pace, especially since you're coming from Black Flag and the Ezio games.
Yeah, how do you feel about them?
So far, I agree they don't match up with what I picture Assassin's Creed as, but I like using them. I found some I really dig. I've got a assassination ability where I throw my Spear of Leonidas at an NPC in range, and I'm able to do an assassination damage attack on him from stealth by basically doing a throwing move. So it's pretty handy. It definitely lets you pick off some troublesome enemies who might spot you otherwise.
Okay. It still feels kind of unbelievable that they wouldn't notice the flying spear kill shot.
Yes. You definitely have some like supernatural abilities here, because the topmost ability of the hunter tree, which is all about bows and arrows, it's like the arrow of Artemis or something, which you get to shoot a ghost arrow through concrete walls and hit any target, no matter how many barriers are in the way.
Yeah, no thanks. I just want to power up my assassination so I can just come up to anybody and get them in one hit. So we would recommend this game under these conditions, but maybe not otherwise. Yeah,
I mean, if you're looking for a big sandbox open world where you're checking off bandit camps and outposts and you want a big time sink, I think Odyssey is pretty good.
All right, and I feel like it's enticing enough. I want to get the carrot on the stick, as you've mentioned, the cooler gear, and oh man, even though they're all silhouettes, I went through every single mercenary that's among those tiers. It's baffling how many there are. You're in tier 9 to start as Alexios or what's her name? Karen?
Cassandra.
Yeah, Karen, the eagle bearer. You're at the very bottom of the food chain. And did you scrub all the way to the end of the tiers?
I have, yes.
It goes, there's 5 each tier until you get to tier 2, in which there's 3. And then tier 1 is one guy. And I want to kill that one guy so I can be the head honcho. And I think that's 70 hours away, but I'm signed up for it.
Awesome. Yeah, there have been some story developments that have definitely piqued my interest, like more so than I was expecting them to. So I also want to see those through.
Okay.
Have you actually gotten onto your ship yet?
No, not even.
Okay, as soon as you do, there's going to be a zinger. So look forward to that.
Oh.
So that was Assassin's Creed Odyssey from 2018. It came out. So time to move on. Maybe you want to tell us what else you've been playing, Heath?
I mean, I mentioned Animal Crossing, but yeah, I'll just crank that out. This is my first. I'm playing Animal Crossing New Horizons. This was actually just a purchase we made because Bailey and I have not been able to be in the same quarters given her occupation. So we decided to double down in this co-op venture, even though we haven't been able to visit each other's islands yet. Animal Crossing is an exploratory, crafting, very Minecrafty, if I may say so, but it's got that Nintendo polish. So there's actual infrastructure and characters that you can interact with. I'm enjoying it. I didn't think I would. I think that it would kind of hit a dead end, but here's how they're actually doing it. It runs the game in real time. So if the sun is setting in where you are, the sun is setting in the game, and it'll become nighttime when it becomes nighttime. And for that reason, I'm not able to beeline to the end yet because the person who runs the museum isn't arriving until today. So I haven't logged in for my second day. I've only played one day of Animal Crossing. And I was catching all the fish and catching all the butterflies and building all the furniture that I could and chopping all the trees that I could. But it's like getting to diminishing returns later in the day, and they're like kind of come back tomorrow. And that's the gameplay loop that it needs to be like a regular thing. And for as long as the living conditions are the way they are, I'm enticed to indulge the loop, and I'm eager to get back in there, earn enough Nook miles to get the better tool set, because currently I'm working with like the flimsy axe that bursts after 75 thwacks. Chris, have you ever played Animal Crossing?
I have no exposure to this series. The only kind of thing I know about it is the real-time component, like you said. As the seasons in the real world change, so do the seasons in the game, which is cool. From what I've heard from reviewers when this game came out, it got great reviews, but they also said, compared to other entries in the Animal Crossing series, this one gets off to a slower start. So if you're already enjoying what you're seeing, perhaps it'll become even far more compelling as you get deeper into it.
Supposedly, yeah, I'm looking forward to sort of the governmental aspects that might happen, and the fact that I have to pay off my debt for the house that I purchased. So it's getting me where I need to be, and I can't wait for like Bailey to come visit my island and see how mine is like way better than hers. That's like the competitive aspect of it. So that's where I'm at. I gotta get those miles.
Very interesting. Wow. Cool that you brought a brand new game release to the show. It literally came out yesterday.
Yeah. I'm on the cutting edge.
Yes, so you are. Which is an excellent transition for me to talk about some 4-year-old games pretty soon. But first, yeah, as Heath mentioned at the top of the show, I have played like an unprecedented quantity of different video games. Maybe not quantity in terms of hours played, that's still pretty constant, but I've been bouncing around like crazy. Starting from the top, like promised, I did finish my playthrough of Kentucky Route Zero. Don't have too much more to say about it. Finishing the game definitely did not make me do a 180 or anything. It did not fundamentally change my opinion. It's still a game that I think has some excellent moments, but I hesitate to actually recommend playing just because other aspects of the game are kind of a slog for me to get through in my personal experience. It's a game really heavily steeped in metaphors. I feel like if you're an English teacher, you would have a field day picking this game apart.
Oh?
And I feel like I am personally, my interpretation of myself is I'm a very literal person, which kind of left me feeling a little out in the cold when it came to playing this game, just because I was interpreting things at face value when I think they wanted you to read between the lines and dig deeper. Ultimately, the devs executed the game with what feels like a ton of confidence. It's really polished. When you walk around in this point-and-click adventure game, every time you do a click, there's this beautiful little horseshoe animation. What's that game called where you pound a nail into the ground and you're trying to throw a horseshoe at it?
Horseshoes.
It's horseshoes?
It's called horseshoes.
That animation kind of plays every time you click to redirect your character. It's interesting. The one positive thing I will say is that I think my memories of playing this game are going to stick with me for a while and maybe grow to be pretty fond, despite the fact that the actual experience of the game left me wanting more. Because there are some scenes that really stick with me.
Okay.
And that was my brief final take on Kentucky Route Zero, which brings me to another indie game I actually finished. And that was, tell me if you've ever played this, Heath. I played Superhot.
Yeah. I mentioned it when I was trying to get my brother, who briefly visited, interested, and he did not take to it super hotly.
Well, I am the opposite. I am hot for Superhot. Game that came out in 2016. People probably know what it is. It's the game whose tagline is "Time moves when you move." It is a first-person shooter, very minimalist design. You're in stark white environments with these garishly red enemies who
Polygonal,
appear,
yeah,
very polygonal. They don't have like any facial features or anything. They're just stick men for all intents and purposes. And they shoot bullets at you, but time is moving at a snail's pace, barely even moving forward until you take a step. As soon as your character starts moving, time speeds up to be at more of a normal cadence, and the bullets will fly at you at regular speeds. But that means is, if you're not touching the keyboard, you have all the time in the world to plan out your next move, which is this fascinating hybrid of like real-time and turn-based mechanics. This feels like they've actually nailed what a turn-based first-person shooter should feel like.
I didn't think of it as practically turn-based.
Right. In theory, it's not, but in practice, it is, because you have ample time to get your bearings, assess where the next threats are going to be, and plan out your best course of action. But then the real-time component is when you actually go to execute on that plan, you do have to have kind of some twitchy reflexes to make it work. And it is kind of a power trip to have these bullets whizzing by you, just narrowly gliding past your body, watching them like pass right in front of your face, but knowing you're safe because you've got this cool plan where you're going to throw your weapon at this guy who's in close proximity to you, which will cause him to drop his weapon in slow motion, which you will pick up out of the air, shoot at him to take him out of the fight, and then still have enough time to throw this new weapon at an incoming bullet in midair and block the bullet before it'll take you out. You can do all sorts of crazy maneuvers, which are only possible because you have so much time to plan out your move. That said, this game is very short. I beat the whole campaign in 2 hours. There's a little more than 30 levels, I would call them. They're usually fairly short scenarios, and there's a lot of creativity to them, but there aren't that many of them. This game, if there were to be a Superhot 2, which I know Superhot VR exists, which is a different game, but if they ever were to flesh this out with even more levels, I think they've like nailed the foundation of a super solid gameplay concept here. I would love to see more weapon variety, because this game has like 3 guns in it. It's got a pistol, it has a shotgun with a big burst spread, which is hard to avoid, and it has an assault rifle, which is like a burst fire weapon. And you've played a good amount of Call of Duty, right, Heath?
I've played a good amount of this game.
You've played a good amount of this game as well. What I was going to say is, in Call of Duty or like another modern military shooter, there's usually like 8 different kinds of assault rifles to choose from. And if you're playing at like an MLG tournament level, maybe you can identify like the subtle differences between the recoil in the guns. But for me and for like a layman out there, I would say most of the assault rifles in a Call of Duty game are more or less interchangeable. Maybe one of them has some more range and another one has a quicker reload, but the differences are fairly inconsequential. I would say if you interjected all that weapon variety into Superhot, where suddenly you are seeing the gun differences down to a fraction of a second, it would feel a lot more differentiated. I feel like shooting a sniper rifle in this game would be super weird, how like maybe you have a single shot, but the bullet travels so quickly in comparison to anything else in the game that it's like a big advantage. Or I would love to see how like a grenade gets handled in the Superhot framework.
Oh,
trying to dodge
now you're,
shrapnel.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
I feel like the weapon variety, if they improved it in another game, could turn this into a super complex puzzle for you to navigate. That would be my word of advice to the Superhot team.
You want to see more weapon variety. I want to hear any music at all, because when you're playing Superhot, you can hear a pin drop. There's like no soundtrack.
That didn't really bother me too much. I took it as like an aesthetic choice. You're in this super stark environment. I feel like it kind of makes sense for there not to be a lot of noise going on.
It did, but for the sequel, for Super Hotter, I want like some speed up and slow down music.
Gotcha. Yeah, I could see that maybe being able to work. What didn't work for me was this game's narrative, if you can even call it that. How this isn't, you're not like playing the story of Superhot. You're playing the story about Superhot, the game, kind of. It's like a .exe file on someone's computer, and they're having these console log chats with this ominous force. Overall, it comes across as being far too edgy for my taste, and kind of like try hard and trying to be like this fourth wall breaking thing, but overall, the narrative of Superhot did not do it for me whatsoever. I was only in it for the very cool turn-based gunfights.
Fair enough.
So that was my experience with Superhot, which I would recommend. I can definitely see how a VR version of this would be like a killer app for VR, to actually have the bullets like traveling oh so close to your face, but you're like narrowly moving your actual body out of the way. That would be really cool.
It is really cool, yeah.
Have you ever tried it?
No, but I've seen it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. If I ever pick up a VR headset, it's probably going to be one of the first games I go for. So that was Superhot. Next up on the games Chris has been playing docket. This one I've been meaning to get to for a while now. I finally dipped into the 2016 reboot of Hitman as well.
Yay! All right, we got Assassin's Creed, we got Hitman. This should be interesting.
So I've never played a Hitman game before.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You play as Agent 47, a bald man with a barcode on the back of his head. And yeah, you are the titular hitman. You enter these levels with a target or two in mind, and your job is to eliminate them without drawing attention to yourself. And one thing that stood out to me initially was when you enter a level, you pick a difficulty setting. And that difficulty setting, I mean, it might affect how much damage you take and the number of enemies, but primarily what difficulty impacts you with is the amount of information at your disposal, which kind of clued me into the fact that despite this game being called Hitman, it's not really an action game, it's a puzzle game. It's a game where, despite the huge arsenal of weapons, I maybe fire 2 or 3 shots in a level, and that's almost always to take out security cameras, not actually at anyone.
Oh.
So the amount of action taking place in this game is super minimal. The minute-to-minute gameplay is knocking people out and stealing their clothes.
Yeah.
That is the bread and butter of this game. You are slipping in and out of social scenarios, trying to do it as anonymously as possible, and you do that.
You are fashion man.
You are fashion man. You, early on, one of the lines is, people see the outfit, they don't see the person. Or people see the uniform, I think, is what they said. I've played through the first 2 big sandbox levels, which is a fashion show in Paris, France, and a underground laboratory in Sapienza, Italy. And they're both very different, full to the brim of different details and NPCs. Like, the crowd density in this game is impressing me with the number of actual, like, entities that are on a screen at one time. So yeah, you are trying to slip into ever increasingly secure areas, and you do that by isolating a poor, helpless maintenance man in a bathroom, knocking him out, and then dressing up as him, and then using that maintenance man cover to infiltrate further and further into this art gala or this underground base. And it is very cool. The threat is there are these characters called supervisors who, like, there will be a head maintenance man who knows his whole crew by face.
And that's not Gary.
Yeah, so your disguise, he will see right through it. So you've still got to be stealthy and avoid the supervisors. But to the majority of people you encounter on your Hitman mission, they'll be like, hey, the maintenance guy.
Hey.
Or I can start serving drinks at this Paris fashion show. And
thank goodness you're here, doctor. We need 100 cc's of this stat.
Yeah, there's definitely like this comedic tone to the whole thing, just because your character is so blank, emotionless slate. But you get him to do these ridiculous things, and he does it all with this level of sincerity to it that it is hard not to laugh about it.
He has to complete the mission even though he's dressed up as the birthday party clown.
Right. Or I think in the sequel, you dress up as like this giant parrot mascot guy.
Right.
So just ridiculous stuff. This definitely like is borrowing, it feels to me like it's borrowing from the immersive sim genre, and that there are so many different ways you can complete your objective. You can make this an action game if you want to, and go in guns blazing. The only like detriments to that approach is you have relatively low health, and if you care about your mission score, they reward you for completing it with as few non-target deaths or casualties as possible.
Right.
You can just discover all sorts of like hidden information if you scope out your target enough. Here's what I'll say. It feels like a giant clockwork puzzle kind of, because for a lot of the time, certain NPCs are on this kind of repeating pattern, and you are just this agent of chaos, slowly poking and prodding at these huge complex system of interlocking mechanics, just trying to inject a little bit of variance into the whole system to try to get an advantage and see what happens, and there will be unintended consequences. Here's a concrete example of what I'm trying to say. In Paris, you're trying to kill a certain guy, and he's like schmoozing and walking around the show floor in a circular pattern for a while. So I kind of know where he's going to be. And I brought a weapon with me into this mission called the Pale Duck. It is this white rubber ducky that is also a remote detonated explosive. So I know approximately where he's going to walk to. So I drop this Pale Duck onto his critical path. And then I set up shop a little ways away and wait for him to walk by so I can detonate the explosive and take him out covertly. However, just a no-name NPC who was a employee at this art gala, he walked by, noticed the rubber duck was just laying on the ground, bent over, picked it up, asked what this is, and then started walking away with my explosive. And I was like, oh no, I need to get that back. So this just was kind of an emerging gameplay thing. I followed the guy to a bathroom where I snuck in behind him, knocked him out, retrieved my Pale Duck, returned back to where my target was, and his path had deviated by a little bit at this point. So I was like, oh no, I need a new plan. And I also can't just leave this rubber duck out hoping no one sees it. So I find a briefcase, okay?
Okay.
This is somewhere else in the level. Put the rubber duck into the briefcase, walk around with that, find out my target's new critical path, drop the briefcase, which is a less suspicious item, onto this path.
Yeah.
People walk by it without incident. And then when my target does get near, I'm able to detonate the duck from the briefcase and take him out that way.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah, so rubber ducks are suspicious if you leave them lying around. don't do that. But it was a cool emergent moment for me in this Hitman reboot. I recommend it. There are some frustrating moments where I'm not exactly sure what to do, and you can just be like, find yourself wandering a level, wondering what's going to happen next. But overall, I think it's a really clever game.
Okay. It's not dated?
No, yeah. Here's a kind of an interesting tidbit about the way I'm playing this. Hitman 2016, an episodic game, came out in 2016, yeah. And it got a sequel in 2018 called Hitman 2, which the developer IO Interactive opted not to release it episodically. What they also did was they released the Hitman Legacy Pack DLC for Hitman 2, which lets you play the levels from Hitman 1 in the new updated and improved Hitman 2 engine, and it's free for anyone who owns Hitman 1. So I am actually playing the Hitman 1 levels in the Hitman 2 game launcher without actually owning Hitman 2 yet.
Oh.
If that makes sense.
What?
Yeah. So they've kind of like consolidated. It's all of the Hitman levels from these rebooted games are under the Hitman 2 umbrella if you want to play them that way.
Huh.
I have one more super short game I was playing. Heath, we like board games around here.
Yes, we do.
However, my in-person game nights have been postponed for the foreseeable future. Just don't want to take that risk at the moment, especially since some attendees of the game night have family members in the medical field. So just going to avoid that whole can of worms for now. But that left me feeling deprived of the pleasures of playing board games. So I revisited a game I haven't touched in years, and that is Tabletop Simulator. A kind of a physics engine for playing board games at a table. Yeah, so I did a trial test run last night with one or two other friends. It was their first time playing Tabletop Simulator. It went really smoothly. It is kind of staggering how much fan-made community content has been created for the Tabletop Simulator platform. Just about every game we conceivably wanted to play, if we looked on the Steam Workshop, it was available. And many of them are like really beautifully made. The board game component scans that fans have uploaded into Tabletop Simulator are very high resolution. It doesn't feel like a cheap knockoff you're playing, despite the fact that you're playing it virtually. Yeah, moving things around with a keyboard and mouse is a little more cumbersome than in real life, of course, and it also kind of stinks that you can't see the person's face unless you play Tabletop Simulator with a VR headset, which apparently there is support for. But yeah, we played a short little bidding game last night called For Sale, and it went on without a hitch for the most part. And yeah, so if you want to spend time playing board games with friends and family you cannot see in person at the moment, Tabletop Simulator is a pretty good alternative, I would say.
Well, then, that's definitely something to consider. Bailey really wanted to play a Jackbox game called Role Models. So, yeah, the game night deficit is being felt by all. So hopefully Tabletop Simulator will be able to alleviate that for some of us.
I can see myself continuing to use it as a game night substitute. There will be a bigger Tabletop Simulator get-together tonight, so maybe you can get in on that, Heath. Or if not, I'll just report back on the show and say how it goes.
No, I'm gonna get in on that.
Okay, awesome. My voice is starting to go, but I successfully got through all the games I've been playing the past few weeks.
And to your credit, Chris, despite the world going upside down, the playthroughs just keep on coming.
Well, I mean, this kind of is the ideal hobby for being isolated inside with nothing else to do.
Fair enough, yeah.
So I'm trying to get some silver lining out of this and take advantage of the current circumstances. And all of our listeners get all this excellent content.
They do. Do you want to go into the news next?
I do, but first I want to drink some water. Hey, Heath.
Yo.
I'm back.
Hey, I forgot to mention, Bailey texted me last night and she goes, "What do you know about What Remains of Edith Finch?" And I was like,
Ooh.
"Oh," and I was like, "Why do you ask?" She sent me a tweet just about like what kind of games can you play that don't make you want to throw the controller at the screen. And so Bailey is like, "Ooh, kind of a murderous kind of story about a young woman and her family that doesn't involve combat. Sign me up."
Wait, was it Bailey or the other person recommending it?
The other person recommended it. Bailey it's now on her radar.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, for me at least, it's still probably my favorite straight-up walking simulator game. I think it's really special.
Very cool. Yeah, you said as much. I went back to episode 11 and gave it a listen. All right. The news. Chris, the news for today are, as you'd expect, Pokemon Go.
Hold the phone.
What?
As far as the order in which we tackle the news, I have one news story that slipped through that is unrelated to anything coronavirus. Would you like to tackle that one first?
Tell me about it.
Guess what? There's a little website out there called Metacritic, and we occasionally reference them, but every year they compile their best publisher rankings of the past year. So this was Metacritic's 10th annual game publisher rankings, and they sort the offerings of all the big game publishers from 2019. This is the year that they're categorizing them in, and they rank them based on 4 pieces of criteria. The first being just like the average Metascore of all their games added up and then averaged. Also, they're taking into account the percent of the products the publisher released that got what they consider a good review, which is a Metacritic score of at least a 75. They detract from that the percent of the scored products that publisher released that got bad reviews. That's a 49 or lower on Metacritic. And then they award extra good for you bonus points for the number of great titles. Those are the titles the publisher released that got a 90 or higher, which is kind of rare. They then aggregate all 4 pieces of criteria I just listed and come up with their own kind of arbitrary score for a publisher and then sort them based on that score. And I just wanted to run through the top 10 while asking you some questions about them to see if you would be able to guess. If I was making a clickbait article about this segment, I would say the number 1 will surprise you. But Heath, if you had to think about all the games that came out in 2019, what publishers do you think are must-appears on the top 10 publisher list?
From Software, the makers of Sekiro Shadows Die Twice.
They're a developer, but they don't self-publish their games, so they would not be in the running. Publishers would be like the EAs, the Ubisofts, the Capcoms, the Konamis of the world.
Well, who published this one? Oh, Activision.
Okay. You expect to see Activision.
One Activision.
Anyone else you might think appears on the list?
Sony Interactive.
Okay. What do you think is propping them up?
Well, God of War was from the previous year.
They did publish Death Stranding.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was divisive, though.
They published a small game called, Concrete Genie. They published a remake of the old PlayStation 1 game, Medieval. And they also did Days Gone last year.
Oh, okay, so none of those are amazing.
Yeah, it was kind of an off year for Sony. So
right.
You're going to strike them from the list? You don't think they're going to make an appearance?
Correct. They are 9 or lower. You said the top 10? Whew, that's a lot of publishers. Yeah. Oh, boy.
In total, they actually give the rankings for the top 40, but that's far too many for us to go through.
Yeah. This is like us ranking the top 10 referees in the NFL. Like, who cares? How about Tencent?
Ooh, do they show up here? For whatever reason, they're not on the list.
Tencent is the largest video game company in the world.
That's true. Okay, let's just dive in. At number 10, we have a little favorite of yours, Devolver Digital.
Yay!
They had a couple of their standout games were like Ape Out from last year they did, and a game called Downwell was a new Switch version of that game. They also did the port of Metal Wolf Chaos.
Yes, which I have such fond memories of.
But actually scored kind of disappointing review scores. That brought them down in the rankings, actually.
It's utter garbage. Exit the Gungeon came out recently, no? On Switch?
Oh, could be. Yeah, so Devolver, their average Metacritic score was a 76. Just for the people at home wondering. Number 9. This was Square Enix. But here's the funny thing about Square Enix. Guess how many distinct titles they released last year?
Kingdom Hearts. How many? Okay. Don't they do The Division or just like a random shooty-looty? They do Tomb Raider.
They do Tomb Raider, but I don't think a Tomb Raider game came out in 2019.
No, it did not. Actually, it did. Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
That was late 2018, I thought.
All right, so we're just talking about Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, except for the fact that Metacritic lists them as publishing 28 distinct titles last year.
Curious.
Yeah, curious. But they were number 9 with an average Metacritic score of 76.1, just barely beating Devolver. Number 8 was Humble Bundle. They had far fewer output, only 7 distinct titles they released. A big one was they published Slay the Spire, though, which brought them up.
Okay.
They had an average Metacritic score of 76.2. Moving up, we've got our friend Xbox Game Studios at number 7, who had a very small release of only 6 distinct titles. Good ones were like Gears 5. They did a Switch port of Ori and the Blind Forest, but then they were brought down by Crackdown 3. Not exactly a glowingly reviewed game.
No.
This one you will probably care about, Heath. Number 6, jumping up with an average Metacritic score of 80.5. This was Annapurna Interactive. What did they release?
They released Outer Wilds.
Exactly. They had a bunch of winners, actually. They did Telling Lies, which was the sequel to Her Story. And they published the new game by the creator of Katamari Damacy.
Yeah.
Called Watam.
Yeah. Yo, we like Devolver and Annapurna in this house.
Fun fact, Annapurna, also the publisher of Kentucky Route Zero.
Mm-hmm.
So they got niche titles, but they're the type of games that get reviewed very well, I guess. They only published 6 titles as well last year.
That's why I picked, what is it called? 12 seconds? 12 hours?
12 minutes?
12 minutes.
12 minutes, I think.
That's why I picked it.
Moving up to number 5. These guys are on fire. Number 5 is Capcom. Last year, they had the Resident Evil 2 remake. They had Devil May Cry 5. They had the very well-received expansion to Monster Hunter World, the Iceborne one. So everything Capcom has been touching lately has been really good. I'm surprised their average Metacritic score was only a 79.1, though.
Well, didn't they have a stinker?
Probably. It says their worst reviewed titles were Switch ports of Resident Evil 6, not one people really like, and Devil May Cry 2, often called the worst Devil May Cry game.
Yep. Yeah.
All right. We're in the top 5 now. Number 4, when you think of like the best publishers, you probably don't think of Paradox Interactive, do you, Heath?
Oh, what does their logo look like?
These are big, complicated...
Europa Universalis.
Yeah, they're the big, complicated strategy game guys. So they're Hoi 4.
Hoi 4, and they did
Hearts of Iron 4. Apparently, their best 2019 reviewed game was Age of Wonders Planetfall.
Oh, whatever that is.
I think it's a big space 4X game. But yeah, so Paradox Interactive slotting at number 4 apparently. Average Metacritic score of 77.8. They released 7 distinct titles last year.
All right.
Number 3, we're at the real heavy hitters now. I'm surprised you didn't guess this one would be up there.
What?
It's Nintendo.
Oh, duh. They publish stuff.
Yeah, average Metacritic score of 80. Got a bunch of great hits like Fire Emblem 3 Houses, Super Mario Maker 2, Luigi's Mansion 3. Yeah, consistent Nintendo seal of quality on all of their games. All right, number 2, the one you did say would make an appearance.
Activision.
It's Activision Blizzard. And yeah, you called it. Sekiro did very well for them. They ported Overwatch to the Switch, which did well. And they had a Hearthstone expansion. Overall, yeah. Activision Blizzard, for as big as they are, they only published 8 distinct titles last year. They kind of just get behind a few behemoths and publish those, don't they? Mm-hmm. As compared to Square Enix's monumental 28 distinct titles, despite the fact that I think Activision Blizzard is a much bigger company.
Yeah, Square Enix publishing everything that moves.
Okay. Metacritic's number 1 publisher of 2019. It hasn't been brought up in the discussion. I don't think you could guess this if you tried, Heath.
It's not EA.
It's definitely not EA, and you're right. Sony did not crack the top 10. The number 1 publisher is 505 Games.
Oh, they make... I've heard of it. They make Terraria.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, but they made Control. Oh, so it's just they put it behind their one horse.
Yeah, their 2 highest profile published games last year were Control and also Bloodstained Ritual of the Night.
Which
is
the Castlevania something.
Castlevania.
Yep.
Yeah. This year, they'll be publishing the PC port of Death Stranding, actually, which is pretty weird.
Oh, so they're dropping a few ranks.
Oh, they might be. Isn't it? Yeah, it's strange that Sony is like, nah, 505 Games can publish this one.
Wow. Take a dive.
So, yeah, that was the Metacritic publisher rankings. It's kind of strange to see publishers like Ubisoft and EA and even Sony not present. Exactly.
Yeah, that is curious.
Yeah, Sony was all the way down at number 22, actually.
Ooh, in the gutter.
So that was our brief break from anything coronavirus related.
Who's your favorite publisher, everybody? Just leave it in the comments.
Send us an email telling us about your favorite publisher and who you think got snubbed. You can write to us at mobiustubespodcast@gmail.com. But continuing on with the news, Heath, what did you want to talk about?
Oh, well, first we should talk about Pokemon Go, which when I texted you my docket, I called it Pokemon Stay.
Yeah, you sure did.
Because it won't make you leave the house anymore.
Oh, tell me more.
Well, it's like greater spawn rates from where you are, and granted, they've implemented battling and adventure mode with the one you pick as your buddy. There's a lot to do that doesn't involve walking, and I think incubators, which were the greatest source of walking because you had to go like 5 kilometers for the egg to hatch, have since been
nerfed?
Yeah. So every time I look up the details, wouldn't
changes.
No one was really dead certain on the changes. It's just that incense, which spawns more Pokemon in your area, was drastically reduced in price and drastically increased in power. And incubators were not going to make you walk 10 kilometers to hatch. So it's interesting to see how Niantic is doing their part. If you Google Pokemon Go in the news, it's always telling you about this one story of an Italian man who refused to lock down and self-quarantine, and the police had to get involved.
Oh, man.
So that's good on Niantic for trying to limit the transmission. That was all I had for that. I opened up Pokemon Go once, but I was just inundated by all the things that have updated since, and I kind of got sidetracked. Moving on. Disco Elysium patch. So, Chris, you have not played Disco Elysium yet. Disco Elysium is the game that I didn't really care for and stomped the indie scene for the 2019 Game Awards.
Right. It fully swept every award it was nominated for.
Mm-hmm. So the patch notes detail mostly cosmetic changes. They fixed a couple of typos. They added certain skill checks to the maps and whatnot. I'm still not thrilled about it. This patch also came with all their recent BAFTA accolades, but it's really,
I see.
it's Disco Elysium still has a sour spot in my mind.
Okay. It still has this, in my eyes, it's still this alluring gem that its reputation has only continued to grow. You are like the only person who has offered a counter opinion to the universal praise it seems to get.
And I'll stand by it, but I'll let you enjoy it for what it's worth. It's still well made from a narrative standpoint.
I see. Yeah, I will be checking it out, and I'm happy to hear about this update, which sounds like it mostly brings just some quality of life improvements to the game.
Very much so. In other news, we very well have covered the very last E3.
Yeah, so if this was a hotter news story, we'd probably have opened the show with it or something, but yeah, we're behind the 8 ball on this, but yes. As Heath referenced, E3 2020 has been canceled.
E3 stands for everybody exit eventually, but it eventually was a couple weeks ago. So, when did this start? Nintendo pulled out back in like 2017, and then Sony pulled out, and then Devolver pulled out, and then everybody pulled out.
Don't forget, Jeff Keighley also pulled out, unrelated to Corona stuff. This was shortly before, but his E3 Coliseum show, which he's been doing recently, he said basically, nah, this kind of isn't the right venue for me anymore. So yeah, as a sign of the times, it seems E3's, the Electronic Entertainment Expo's relevance has been definitely on the decline. It's waning. And the coronavirus may be the final nail in the coffin. So this year, the official E3 press gaming show, the biggest one in the world, will not be happening in June any longer. The ESA, the organizing body that puts on the show, said they will try to organize some sort of online event and coordinate with the other game publishers. It remains to be seen if that will come to fruition or not. It very well could be that. So obviously, all the big game companies, they still have news they need to convey to us. They're probably just going to host their own sequestered online events, kind of like the Nintendo Direct or
the Devolver Direct.
Or the Devolver Direct.
Those are hilarious.
Yeah, those get oddly avant-garde, don't they?
Yeah, a little bit.
We'll probably see the likes of Microsoft and EA and Activision hosting their own online streamed press conference to us digitally. It was one strange casualty of this whole thing was the fact that Warner Brothers, for the first time, was going to have an E3 press conference this year. Did you hear about that?
What? So they could just sell us more Mortal Kombat?
They had 3 big heavy hitters they were going to show.
Oh, Injustice?
WB Montreal, they were going to show the new Batman game they are working on.
Oh.
Rocksteady, the main Batman Arkham studio.
Yeah, what are they
They were
doing?
finally going to debut what they've been working on this whole time, which we don't really know. And they were going to show a leaked, big, ambitious Harry Potter RPG game. Some footage of that leaked way back in 2018 and has since disappeared, but I think that game was finally going to be shown in the limelight at this Warner Brothers press conference, which will probably still happen, just not at E3.
Okay.
So, with all these companies now being forced to kind of just do things independently, seemingly some of them will probably think to themselves, hey, we got our news out there in the same way as always, but we didn't have to pay these massive fees to the ESA to get this presence at E3. Maybe we're better off just going independent from now on.
Yeah, no one's really a loser in this case, except for WB, as you mentioned.
Yeah, WB maybe. The biggest loser is the ESA, the Entertainment Software Association.
Well, now they can pump
because-
that cash into something different.
Well,
Or is there no cash to be
Okay.
pumped?
so my understanding is E3 was a major source of the ESA's incoming revenue. It was like a big let's make some money time of the year for them. And I don't hear a lot of people covering this. The ESA has gone on to say, yeah, we'll be back in 2021, and we're eagerly looking forward to that. I almost wonder, now, this exact figure, I don't know how it got into my head. Maybe it was just a fever dream and I'm talking out of my ass right now. But for some reason, I thought I had heard and knew that roughly half of the ESA's funding, 50% or so, comes from E3. And if that is actually the case, and I'm not lying to you on the air right now, I don't know if the ESA is going to be around a year from now. They might just become insolvent because they're not exactly doing too hot already. Like, they've been trying to pivot E3 to make it more of a consumer show to collect revenue from just the layman as they enter the show. But with E3 not happening at all, they could just become bankrupt, potentially.
They should make their own game.
Their own game. They're not a publisher. They're a game
I know,
lobbying body.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Which, would kind of suck if the main video game governmental influencing body just ceases to exist. But maybe I'm being too alarmist about the whole thing. Maybe they're actually going to be able to weather this storm.
We will see, but it's definitely curious the way that... Do you even remember what was shown in 2019?
There were lots of cinematic trailers last year. One was for Elden Ring. I remember that. That seems cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2019 was kind of a weak E3.
I keep getting it merged with the Game Awards.
Yeah, as E3 declines, the Game Awards kind of becomes more and more prominent in the game space.
Yep.
Okay, so E3, yeah, we may have watched E3 for the final time and not even realized it.
Which is super weird.
Sad, yeah. My prediction is 2021. If there's an E3, it'll be in name only. It'll be the publishers doing their own independent shows and maybe like throwing on a hashtag E3, but I don't think the show floor will actually exist next year. That is the Chris take.
Yeah, and that feels near inconsequential.
Yeah, I mean, from the person watching the press conferences at home perspective, it is kind of inconsequential.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it'll be a blow, though, just kind of to know that this event that maybe I could have gone to someday has ceased to exist.
Yep.
Okay, moving on.
Well, that was all my news. I just had Pokemon Go and the disco patch.
Okay, I've got a couple more somewhat depressing things.
Uh-huh.
Okay, how about this, Heath? Did you know on March 15th, Steam surpassed a new record for the number of concurrent users online?
Right. So in the wake of the lockdown measures being announced, or when was the 15th? Was it Monday?
The 15th
was
was
Sunday.
in fact Sunday. Okay. last Sunday.
Right. So everybody's getting the news that it's like, don't come to work tomorrow. So they're like, well.
Or just the fact, don't come to work tomorrow, or maybe don't come into work indefinitely. Scary news to receive. But so the new record has been reached. Steam surpassed 20 million concurrent users on the evening of March 15th. A new record for the platform. So a lot of people are inside and on their computer and not going out and doing things, which is benefiting Valve, I guess. Here's my hypothetical question I want to pose to you, Heath. Okay. How do you think the reception to this scenario going down would be? If Valve were to, let's say, have an impromptu sale, and it's labeled something like the Stay Inside sale or the COVID-19 sale, do you think this would be viewed as a kind of a generous and maybe like public good to try to keep people inside and not infecting others? Or would people view it as this malicious
taking advantage of an epidemic
to try to extract money out of people who don't have anything better to do?
Oh my God.
I could see the reception being both ways. How do you think that would be received?
What's the saying? It's like squeezing blood from a stone or something. Yeah.
Yes.
They're literally like sucking the blood out of your IV. It's really predatory. No, Chris, I think, okay, so what are some other acts of generosity that corporations have kind of done? My student loan interest has stopped accruing. I know that Walmart and Target CEOs were like, yeah, we're totally going to use our parking lots for testing locations. Lollipop Farm, our local animal adoption center, has waived adoption fees. So people who are sad and staying inside can like get a pet maybe. I know we're trying to get a cat, but that's unrelated garden mole issues. Anyway, back to the topic. I think in this moment, they would certainly, people would be of both opinions, but the majority would be that Valve is doing us a solid because they're already very generous in their sales. It would be seen as like crisis relief rather than gouging the what am I trying to say? Like captured audience, or captive audience. That is
captive audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would see it as a good thing, just because no matter what, the audience is already captive and the alternative is just paying full price. It's also worth noting a few games that normally aren't free have been made free during this time. So you can get like the Tomb Raider reboot is free on Steam right now. And some other Lara Croft games. I guess that would probably be Square Enix's call to make these free for a limited time. But yeah, so some companies are giving away games during this time where people have a lot of free time to play games. So that was Steam is doing really well. Let's talk about a different video game distributor who maybe isn't doing so well, and that is GameStop.
Yeah.
Did you see this news headline? GameStop is trying to say that it's an essential business and its employees are very upset about it.
Right, because the government is saying that all non-essential staff be relegated to their homes. And they started to define essential as like groceries, pharmacies. But from GameStop on high, and this is not necessarily from Reggie Fils-Aimé. Well, you say it.
So GameStop has said it's trying to argue that it should be considered essential because it offers mice and keyboards that could help people work from home. That is their line of reasoning. It's worth noting probably most of the mice and keyboards sold at GameStop are like kind of luxury goods, gamer-y mechanical keyboards and mice that light up. Not the kind of office supplies you'd be buying if you actually needed to work from home.
Right, that is such a lavish excuse.
Right, and so yeah, they're trying to justify staying open, which is putting their employees at risk. They really want to stay open because finally, like this Friday, was the release date for Doom Eternal and Animal Crossing New Horizons.
And both of those games could not have come at a better time.
Yeah, I mean, assuming people can get to the store and buy them.
I bought Animal Crossing digitally.
Right. So yeah, digital might be the way to go right now. Did you see that GameStop actually released Doom Eternal one day before the official release date as a measure
to mitigate
not
crowd
control?
Yeah,
to not cross mingle the two fan bases of Animal Crossing.
Well, no, it was just keeping their maximum occupancy low, which is good.
Right. Yeah, they weren't segregating them just for laughs. No,
also, the fan bases are kind of merging.
Yeah, they had some like cross-promotional stuff on Reddit, right?
Which is very funny. And like IGN's review artwork had Doom Guy catching butterflies and Isabelle from Animal Crossing in Doom Slayer's armor.
You probably would be hard-pressed to find two franchises that are stranger bedfellows together.
Yeah, and everybody's wishing that Nintendo and Doom's team would... Is it id? Sorry, I meant to say...
Yeah, it is id Software.
Yeah, everyone is hoping for a collaborative effort in which some piece of furniture in Animal Crossing is Doom related, and then a collectible in Doom is like a leaf.
Right. So yeah, in some cases, police have been called in to enforce GameStop to comply with the shutdowns in effect and actually close their doors. Yeah,
to which GameStop employees are supposed to like hand the cops the memo.
Right. Yeah, the memo that says we sell mice and keyboards. If I was a GameStop higher up, I would have made a different case, Heath. I would have said we are an essential business to preserving people's sanity during this time.
Yeah.
Because they need something to do.
Their mental health is as important as their physical health. I thought that's where we were going until it's the computer periphery argument, which is like the weakest thing ever.
Yeah. So that's GameStop being kind of slimy during the pandemic we're facing. And that is all the news I have prepared for the show.
Yep. That's all I got. And there's not a whole lot. Everybody's just inside playing Animal Crossing and Doom.
And thank goodness they have those games to occupy themselves with.
They do.
Pretty soon we'll get some more, like the Final Fantasy VII remake. That'll make a lot of people happy, hopefully. And yeah, we'll get through this. We'll have plenty of games to play. I don't know how long we want to revisit this topic, Heath, but what do you think the over-under is now on next generation consoles actually releasing in 2020?
I mean, they were still slated for holiday 2020, right?
That's right. Yeah, presumably in November.
Oh, well, there's December, right? This might come out.
I mean, sure. That would be... Usually they don't want to miss those Black Friday sales.
Oh, well, they're surely gonna. When I was thinking holiday 2020, I was thinking like right before Christmas.
Gotcha. Yeah, probably not that late. So here's the thing. These consoles would be foreseeably manufactured in China, which is having manufacturing constraints right now.
Allegedly, China's on the upswing. Only Italy is like really feeling it.
Yes, I have heard rumblings of that. There's probably a backlog of things they need to fulfill in the manufacturing pipeline before they can start doing the consoles. But here's the other thing, though. Even if they are able to produce enough in time and there won't be supply constraints, which they might do. Maybe they release them in like a limited run this year instead of delaying them. But even if they get them out this year, there's a chance, like with all of the loss of business and stocks plummeting, people just might not be in the right financial situation to be buying luxury consoles this holiday. So it might not be a very good economic scenario in which to release a big, expensive, shiny box.
Yeah. Well, hard to say.
Yeah, maybe this is a flash in the pan and the stock market rebounds in June, but Yeah, like you said, it is very hard to say, and I definitely have zero insight into what is likely to occur.
Well, I'm hoping that the stock market doesn't rebound and it gets really bad so that housing prices get lower so I can buy a house.
Okay.
You're
okay.
probably in the same boat, maybe, but
You want interest rates to plummet.
I do, but I think that the stock market is going to rebound.
We shall see. All right, that's going to be about a wrap for episode 36 of Mobius Tubes. No emails this week, I'm afraid, but listeners, I'm sure you have
they
plenty
have anything better to do. Send us some emails.
Yeah, please send us some emails. You can write to us at mobiustubespodcast@gmail.com.
We want to be your pandemic pen pals.
We absolutely want that honor. So, until next time, Heath, this has been Mobius Tubes, and we will continue to play games and then talk about them.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to go back and play some AC, if you know what I mean.
Oh, I know what you mean. All right. Bye.
Bye. Chris, I don't think this time when we go into the cardboard corner, I don't think we should leave.
Yeah, it might be safer here in these very sturdy, structurally sound cardboard walls.
Yeah. That we are both in.
Yeah, we're definitely in it. Yeah, so this is the cardboard corner.
Yay.
Welcome back. So maybe not the best time to be discussing games you play in a physical space with your friends and family.
Yeah,
but
do we pivot and talk more about Tabletop Simulator or a game that you can do through Tabletop Simulator?
Nah, we're gonna accrue like a backlog of games our listeners can check out when they emerge from their fallout shelters.
Sure, yeah, that'll do.
Because they're probably gonna be feeling socially deprived when that time comes, and they'll want to be doing social activities like board games. And that's where we come in with the Cardboard Corner, our little segment at the end here where we discuss board games we think have some merit to them and you maybe want to check out.
Last time we talked about Scythe, the area control expansionist economy game. And this time we're saying get rid of all that combat and all that financial management.
Yeah. And instead, we're opting to tell you about a cool cooperative game called Mysterium.
Mysterium it has one of them D&D dividers.
Yeah, there's kind of a big separating visor for only one player to see. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Mysterium is
I was
a
just
cooperative
telling them
game.
what it would look like.
Oh, sure. Yeah. My bad. It's a game with the theme of Clue, basically.
I should have said that.
Yeah, you're in a mansion, a murder has occurred, and a group of paranormal investigators have been called to the mansion to solve it this night only, because otherwise the spirit will never be put to rest peacefully and will wander the world forever.
Or at least until next year.
Or at least until next year. Most players playing Mysterium will take on the roles of the paranormal investigators, and one player will be the spirit, the ghost. The main bread and butter of the game is this guessing game, where behind this visor that only the ghost can see, each other player at the table has been assigned a murder suspect, a murder location, and a murder weapon, just like Clue. But only the ghost knows who has been assigned to which combination. And laid forth in front of you on the table are these little cards with beautiful illustrations of all the possible suspects, locations, and murder weapons. And this is a clue-giving game where the ghost will feed each paranormal investigator a dream every hour. There's a whole deck of these dream cards that are these cool, abstract, surreal illustrations. Kind of like a Dixit card, if you're familiar with Dixit, but that's all I'll say about Dixit. Every hour, the ghost decides what dream to give to each investigator in an effort to corral them into guessing their assigned person, place, and thing.
So if I'm a paranormal investigator, during a given turn, I will say, "Oh, I think because my dream card features a carrot, I must be the chef."
Right. Or maybe there's a lot of like gears on a card you're handed. And maybe you think you're like the bicycle repair guy.
The mechanic.
The mechanic. But oftentimes the stream card you're handed will be up to the player's interpretation. There are multiple different aspects to the card that might jump out to you, that you might latch onto. And yeah, so that's where the ambiguity comes into play, where how do you interpret the dream you're given, and who should you guess that you are assigned to on the board? It's a cool puzzle. It's cooperative, so everyone is working together towards a similar outcome. You are supposed to discuss with your fellow investigators, like, what do you think about this dream I've been given? And bounce ideas off of each other.
Yo, hold up. This dream card I got, it's got a cloud, and there's a cloud in the background of the photograph that's behind my character.
Right. Different things will stand out to different people. You might debate with each other over who you think you should go with. It's a cool experience. We like to play it with the ghost is not allowed to speak.
Oh, that's how the game. It's the instructions.
Oh yeah, I think it is in the instructions. So after people lock in their guesses, the ghost must confirm or reject everyone's guess based on their answer sheet. And they knock on the table to indicate the correct response. They knock once to say, "No, I'm sorry, you're wrong." They knock twice to say, "Yes, you were right." You get to proceed in the game and go on to the next stage of the game, which is usually guessing locations.
And that's the extent to which the role playing is expected. So don't be discouraged by, "Oh, I gotta pretend to be a ghost."
Yeah, you don't have to. I mean, you can have fun with it, but we usually just do the not talking thing.
Yeah, I mean the team that's working together, it doesn't have to be like, "You're right, Inspector. Your dream card does have a warmthful embrace, and what could be warmer than the candlestick that murdered them?"
True. What's pretty cool is this game pretty light on the rules. It can go up to 7 players, so you can bust it out as like a fun party game for that kind of a social setting. However, if you were to do so, I would recommend having the player who is most familiar with the rules take on the role of the ghost, just because that has maybe the most responsibility associated with it.
And the most, the player who is maybe the quietest or the most disciplined, because it damn near ruins a game if one of the players is like, "I think it was done in the bedroom," and then the ghost is like, "Oh, no." The ghost needs to really stick to their guns.
Yeah, the ghost has to maintain a poker face. Otherwise, you're kind of cheating. Which, I mean, maybe you have a different priority than me. We like to play it very straight. And yeah, the game supports different difficulty levels too. So you can play an easier game of Mysterium where there's maybe fewer suspects to guess from, or a harder game where there's like way too many. It's a tough game. We should probably mention that. We seldom win a game of Mysterium. There is a ticking clock. The game is supposed to take place over like 7 hours, which equate to 7 rounds, where the ghost gets to distribute new clues every round, and unless everyone can correctly identify all 3 of their assigned murder, person, place, and thing in those 7 rounds, if anyone is left behind, the whole group fails. So you have an invested interest in making sure everyone does well.
Yeah, because it's cooperative, you can't really use the excuse of a weakest link. You really need to pull them together and kind of convince them if your school of thought has been what the ghost has been dishing out.
That brings me to one of the game's negatives for me, though, and that is the game's final round, which I am not the biggest fan of. If you and your fellow paranormal investigators are able to pass the first trial in the first 7 hours of the game, you get to do the final round, which the ghost then picks one set of person, place, and thing from behind their visor dividing thing.
As the whodunit.
As the true solution to the case. And then they must deal out some 3 final dream cards for everyone to see simultaneously and get those paranormal investigators to come to a majority vote on which of the different sets of suspects is the final solution. Why don't I like it? I just think, so you're not supposed to be able to discuss this final round amongst your fellow investigators. So all of the discussion that the game, which is the game's main selling point to me, all of that discussion dries up. And then also, it's just kind of, I don't know, I think it feels a little arbitrary to have the ghost just kind of pick one to be the answer at the end. I don't know if that bothers other people or if it's just a me thing.
It's not the most celebrated moment in the game.
Yeah. So maybe the game's climax isn't as strong as it should be, but you won't have to worry about that too much, actually, because as our group plays, if you're anything like us, we rarely make it to the final round. I'd say probably 2/3 of the time we don't.
And if we do, you kind of have to rely on certain cards that you may have seen before, and oh, that's gotta be the backyard pool area.
True. Right. But as far as cooperative party-like games go, I think it's a pretty good one. I think the illustrations on the artwork, which you spend a lot of time looking at in this game, is very good. There's a whole spooky theme. The components are nice. The sense of cooperation I feel during a game is pretty good. It doesn't run into the quarterbacking problem that, say, other cooperative games like Pandemic sometimes suffer from, where the most experienced player is trying to dictate everyone's actions, and probably people, if they want to win, should probably just do what they say, because this game is so up to interpretation and subjective just artwork on the cards that you can't really have, you can't be a high-level competitive Mysterium player, I don't think.
Right, unless you have, an idiodactic memory or...
Yeah. Is it a game you're pretty fond of, Heath?
Yes, it is. I like being the ghost.
I enjoy being the ghost as well. I do appreciate the asymmetry there, because playing a game of Mysterium as a ghost versus the detective, those offer 2 very different experiences.
Yeah, so I would recommend this. I know we didn't mention Dixit, but I would recommend it to anybody who likes that game.
Right. Is this a game you've had success introducing people to board games with?
No, this has been only the core group, I feel.
Okay. I've heard it said it's a pretty good introduction game for just general people. In the one time I've tried it, though, it actually didn't go over so well. Some people were into it. Some people were frustrated by the clues I was giving them and thinking I was sabotaging them and had
their
an out
fault.
for them.
That's their fault for being narrow-minded.
Whoa, okay. Well, I mean, I'm just saying the potential for this game to frustrate a player could happen.
True. But I feel like the customer is always right, the ghost is always right.
If you are the player who is still stuck on picking the suspect and you're watching the rest of the investigators get further and further ahead of you and you feel like you're dragging the group down, that could be a negative feeling.
Understandably, yeah.
But overall, Mysterium...
It's a departure from the other games that we mentioned, but we still recommend it.
Yes. I wouldn't give it my firmest of recommendations, but it's a game I'm happy to have in my collection for the correct situations where it's suited to it. Yeah, I do recommend it. Maybe just not over the moon for it.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
And yeah, so that was Mysterium on this episode of Cardboard Corner.
Gucci.
So on that note, I hope you all have a excellent 2 weeks, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Heath. Bye.